It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
Murder and mayhem in Minneapolis again. The slaying of a veteransaffairs ICU nurse has set the United States on fire. Civil war is impending. And murder in the governing British Labour Party as the Prime Minister cuts Andy Burnham, his only serious rival for the British Premiership, out of the opportunity of returning to Parliament to proclaim it. You'd have to have a heart of stone not to laugh. And the military assets are all in place now for a United States attack on Iran, which would ignite, well, the mother of all wars. It's all coming up on the mother of all talk shows this evening. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
Britain having been reduced to a backwater these days, let me start with the lesser of the issues on the table this evening, namely the complete disaster, shambles, omni-shambles, created by Keir Starmer in the Manchester constituency of Gorton and Denton. For international viewers, that's a constituency in which we, the Workers' Party, are extremely strong. We have a hard-working councillor there, Shahbaz Sarwar, who took that seat just a couple of years ago, less than that, from the deputy leader of the Labour Party on Manchester City Council. Since when Shahbaz Sarwar has become a celebrity councillor. People come from all over the city to seek his advice rather than the advice of their own councillor. Shahbaz Sarwar, holding Longsight, a key part of the Gorton and Denton constituency, was a looming shadow over the possibility of Labour losing the by-election there, which has just been created. They say, where there's death, there's hope. The sitting Member of Parliament did not die, but he claimed that he was stepping down for health reasons. But the real reason was to allow Andy Burnham, the Labour Mayor of Greater Manchester, the opportunity to re-enter Parliament and thereafter, and probably very shortly thereafter, challenge Keir Starmer for the Labour leadership and therefore the Prime Ministership of Britain. But they forgot about me. They forgot that I had fought Gorton once before. They forgot about Councillor Shahbaz. They forgot about our strength in that constituency. So as soon as Andy Burnham declared his intention to run for the seat, I announced that if he did, he would be facing me in the by-election. That caused total panic in the Labour ranks, especially when I made it clear that I would only be a candidate if Andy Burnham was my opponent. So by 8 votes to 1, Keir Starmer's clique stopped the possibility of Andy Burnham standing, and now they will field a much lesser mortal. I've no idea who it will be, but I know that the paucity of talent in the Labour ranks will mean that our candidate, Shahbaz Sarwar, will defeat them. And that is our number one prize. But if our number two prize is only to make sure Labour loses the seat, well, that's all right too. Well, the cat's amongst the pigeons. The Labour squabble over this chicanery by Keir Starmer has caused consternation, panic amongst the Labour ranks. Now they face the real probability of losing the parliamentary by-election, having forced the Mayor of Greater Manchester into this ignominious position. As I said in the introduction, you'd have to have a heart of stone not to laugh. But the truth is, nobody is really laughing, because Britain has descended into a dystopian hellhole where the hopelessness of the population is matched only by the growing anger at the absolute paucity of leadership on view. Our economy is going down the drain, and all Keir Starmer can think about when he's not busy securing his own position is taking Britain into war. He's currently in Beijing, kowtowing to the Emperor Xi Jinping, having called China an adversary, an enemy, a threat, a security threat, claiming that they had infiltrated the British Parliament, blocking their embassy in London from planning permissions and so on. He's now on his knees in Beijing. But it won't do any good. The Chinese are not forgiving people, you see. They don't wipe out history, and they definitely don't wipe out recent history. The recent history of Britain's threats, even sending warships to the South China Sea, to the Straits of Taiwan, to threaten, to menace the People's Republic of China. Imagine, just brush it off your shoulder, China. That's the attitude that they will take. So they may throw a bone or two to Keir Starmer, as they did to Emmanuel Macron, as they did to Mark Carney, and as Donald Trump says, Canada is currently being taken over by China. He called Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, he called him Governor Carney, as if Canada was already a state of the United States of America, as it may well turn out to be. What's the next step, Donald? Are you going to invade Canada as you threatened to invade Denmark until Denmark and the European Union, Chihuahuas, French poodles and all, well, they lost their bottle and gave you. You don't even have to invade it. You have been given Greenland by the giants of the European political spectrum. But turning to probably the biggest story, though it may be overtaken any minute, and it's the murder and mayhem in Minneapolis. Twice now. First of all, a white mother was shot dead in the face in the car, through the car window by an ICE agent as she was leaving after dropping off her child at school. Shot dead with 2 rounds to the face by these these brown shirts that are now the personal private army of Donald J. Trump. States' rights? Ha! The United States fought a civil war on the issue of states' rights. It's bedeviled American politics since the beginning of the Union. And the states are now being shown by Donald Trump that they control meaningfully nothing at all. That if an emperor like Caligula Trump comes to power, he can and will do anything that he wants across the world, but also against you, the American people, against your Constitution, which is now not worth the paper it's written on. Your rights were about the right to carry arms. The man that they murdered on the screen right now, the man that they murdered was carrying a weapon, which he was fully entitled to do. It was in a holster about his person. He had a legal gun license. He was licensed to carry a concealed firearm. And in any case, they took the firearm from him before they murdered him in cold blood on the ground with at least 6 ICE agents on top of him. They murdered him in full view on camera in cold blood. And the people of Minneapolis have risen up. And the people of the United States are going to all rise up against their president. He has clearly lost it. He's lost his marbles, as we say in this country. He's lost his mind. Now he must lose his office. Because I'm telling you that Donald Trump is dealing nothing but death and destruction around the world and at home. At home and abroad, it's the same picture. This ICE private army is the IDF in action, the Israel Defense Force in action. Everything they do, every attitude they strike, gamboling across the road, clapping their hands, cheering over the murder of an American citizen, and not just any American citizen. He is an ICU nurse. A nurse, by all the testaments I've been reading, of the very highest order. And where does he work? He works at Veteransaffairs. He treats U.S. military veterans for a living, or he did before he was dead at the hands of Donald J. Trump. So, you know, I realize I'm probably breaking a law or two. I realize I'm killing my chances of entering the United States to watch the World Cup. I have no idea how Donald Trump can possibly now be entrusted with hosting the World Cup when he's shooting his own citizens, even white citizens, on an almost daily basis. ICE are on a rampage, just like the storm forces, SA, the brown shirts in Hitler's Nazi Germany. In fact, to me, Trump is increasingly resembling the fascist dictatorships of the 1920s and 30s. He doesn't have the mustache, but he's definitely got the Mussolini jowls. He's definitely got the Mussolini persona. He is metamorphosing into the Italian dictator Il Duce. But Il Duce had mass support amongst the Italian people. As we're about to find out in just a few months' time in November, Donald Trump has lost mass support. When he gave that middle finger to the firefighter in the Ford motor plant in Michigan, I said at the time he was giving the finger to the blue-collar working class in America. And this murder of this ICU nurse in Minneapolis may well send the temperature in the United States to boiling point amidst the frost and snow. The military assets are all in place for a war against Iran. In fact, if it wasn't for this latest brouhaha, he might very well have launched a new US war against Iran. Iran certainly believes so. Iran has battened down the hatches, has primed the missiles, including the world's most effective hypersonic missiles that they did not use in the 12-day war, but will use immediately if war breaks out against Iran in the next days or even weeks. These missiles will decimate the oil economy of the entire Persian Gulf. Every country that hosts American bases on their land will see those assets destroyed. The Straits of Hormuz will be immediately mined and become thereby impassable. The collapse of the economies of Western Europe will then ensue. Economies that are already in recession, economies that are already in the most parlous of circumstances will grind to a catastrophic halt. There will be no oil, no gas from any of the US satrapies in the Persian Gulf. Do people understand that? And of course, no amount of Venezuelan oil purloined by the piracy of Donald Trump will even begin to make up for that. Venezuelan oil production is on the floor, and it takes quite a long time and a lot of investment, which the US oil companies are not prepared to provide to boost the production. And in any case, the kind of oil that comes from Venezuela, heavy, viscous oil, suitable really only for military purposes, is of no use and will never make up for the total destruction of oil and gas production in the Persian Gulf. The Iranians have said any attack on us will be treated as all-out war, treated as a full-scale regime change attempt, whether it is or whether it isn't. And they will fire back all guns blazing, first in their own region, then against Israel, and then against American military bases scattered all around them. Ever taken a look at where the US bases are around Iran? Think of all the assets and men and women that are in those bases, and all of them are in reach, in range of the Iranian missile capabilities. We'll be talking to the one and only Scott Ritter in just a couple of minutes, who's ideally placed to discuss all of these issues. So I will turn now to the issue that is still the biggest enchilada of them all. It appears that the negotiations to bring an end to the disastrous NATO-Russia war in Ukraine have begun to accelerate. It appears, given the talks that took place in Abu Dhabi yesterday, the private contacts in Maralago and in Moscow, Witkoff and Kushner. Who's Kushner, by the way? Who elected him? Who appointed him? But he is now a key negotiator for Donald Trump, not just on the Ukraine track, but also on the Gaza track. Well, Witkoff and Kushner were in Moscow. They were immediately ushered into the presence of the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and the talks lasted well over 3 hours. Zelensky's meeting with Donald Trump lasted 49 minutes. You can do the maths, you can do the arithmetic. It seems to me, and we'll see if Scott Ritter agrees, that we are on an accelerated, maybe final furlong. Do you understand furlongs around the final lap of the race to bring about an end to the Ukraine war? But I'm sure of one thing, that the terms on which it will end will be far more painful for Zelensky and for NATO than they would have been if they'd been concluded earlier. Much, much earlier, and much, much more punishing. It seems to me that Russia cannot possibly agree to allow the Zelensky clique to continue to govern Transnistria, where the merger between Moldova and Romania now appears to be certain. Well, if they think they're taking Transnistria and its entirely Russian population into NATO as part of a merger between Moldova and Romania, they've got another thing coming. It seems to me that Russia cannot possibly agree to stop fighting, which it is winning, headlong dash, all the way to Kiev if they want to. It seems to me impossible to imagine that the Russians will agree to leave the priceless Russian jewel of a city, which I know so well, the city of Odessa, in the Kiev regime's hands. It seems to me that Russia has no option but to landlock the rump state of Ukraine that will emerge at the end of these negotiations. In the last 2 minutes, let me turn to Gaza. I can almost not be, I thought nothing would surprise me. I thought that nothing would amaze me more than what happened this week. The Board of Peace, as mangy a crew as could possibly be assembled, hooks and crooks and comic singers, assembled to Donald Trump's Board of Peace, and Donald thanked them for inviting him to be the chairman of the board. There was Tony Blair, the murderer of 1 million people in the Middle East, the Middle East envoy appointed by George W. Bush, who was responsible for the massacre of Arabs and Muslims all over the world. There was some, wouldn't be politic perhaps for me to identify all of them, but the crew that was assembled are the least likely Board of Peace that you could possibly imagine. As Elon Musk put it, more a board of peace, a piece of Venezuela, a piece of Palestine, a piece of Lebanon, a piece of Iraq, and a piece perhaps of Iran. But having declared an era of peace and plenty, Donald Trump might well be about to blow it all up in the Persian Gulf. Let's hear from the one and only Scott Ritter about this and more. Stay tuned. Full marks to you for your dogged persistence and your quiet and dignified insistence that you were right and I was wrong. I don't actually recall the clash that we had, but I would have to say that you are being proven right, and I am being proven to have hoped for things that have not transpired. Because I said all along, I repeated it 100 times, that the big enchilada, World War III, an intensification of American involvement in the Ukraine war was more likely to happen under the Democrats, under President Kamala Harris, than under a renewed President Trump. And I'll go to the stake defending that position.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Here's the poll for this evening. Is Trump's Board of Peace intended to replace the UN? Well, I mean, the UN is a pretty mangy crew, but now Trump's Board of Peace may, some say, be intended to replace it. You can vote yes or no on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream. And if you're watching on the YouTube stream, please subscribe to my channel and give thumbs up to the show. Every night when I finish this broadcast, I find the same 4,000 people have given a thumbs up. But what about the rest of you? Don't you know that that's how we influence Mr. Algorithm? Don't you know that we're under constant pressure by Mr. Algorithm? Why wouldn't you help me by giving a thumbs up when you're actually watching it on the screen? Why wouldn't you subscribe to my channel when you should know that it will boost our output, boost the number of people that will be shown it? And of course, if you are one of the vanguard, the advance guard, who support me on patreon.com/George Galloway, you can also vote there. If you want to call the show, it's toll free in the US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free in Britain and Ireland, 08081 96 5522. And the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. I don't need really to introduce Scott Ritter to you. He's a very frequent guest of ours because, well, he's the best. He's the master. He's the master of war. He's the master of the politics of war. But he's also, of course, an American patriot who's dismayed by the scenes he's watching in his own country, about which I'm going to ask him first. Scott Ritter, former Marine Corps intelligence officer and United Nations weapons inspector. Welcome back. Can we start at home, if you don't mind? I characterized in my monologue this ICE as a kind of storm association, the SA, the brown shirts, the private army of the dictator. And it seems to me that Caligula is metamorphosing under our eyes. We can see it in real time, into somebody who thinks, at least, that he's no longer the president of the United States, a constitutional republic, but a dictator in Trumpland. How does it all look to you?
Well, sadly, what you're saying, unfortunately, rings true. It's not that the current president of the United States thinks he's a dictator. He says he's a dictator. And he seems to be okay with this. He is a man who has walked away from any notion of legal constraints on what he can do as president. And in the United States, these legal constraints are defined by the Constitution of the United States and the laws that are derived thereof. He has basically said that law no longer matters to him. The only thing that matters is his own sense of personal morality. And we don't need to go too far down that path to understand that that's problematic prima facie. Congress, this isn't something that one man can simply do in America. I mean, we have to face the sad reality in the United States that this experiment we call the constitutional republic is either on its deathbed or has already passed, and we just have yet to bury the body. Congress, mandated by the Constitution to hold executive power in check, is failing to do just that. And the judiciary, which likewise is there to hold executive and legislative power in check because of the rule of law, has been completely undermined by, its unwillingness or inability to challenge executive authority. I mean, this dates back to, the time of Andrew Jackson, when he famously told the Supreme Court, you passed a law, now enforce it. But that's, the idea of a constitutional republic is that we don't need to have an army with the judiciary capable of standing up to the army of the executive. All law enforcement and military in the United States are supposed to adhere to the rule of law set forth by the Constitution. Indeed, they all take an oath, the same oath that those who hold office to uphold and defend this Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. But the sad state of affairs in America today is, I will guarantee you that fully 90% of the people that take that oath have no clue what the Constitution is. Therefore, the oath is meaningless because they're giving an oath to something that doesn't exist in their mind. The Constitution must reside in the heart of every American if it is going to mean something. And that heart must pump blood infused with constitutional loyalty into the brain of Americans. But Americans don't think constitutionally. We have today in the United States, people who believe that I voted for this. They say this over and over again. This is what I voted for when we speak of ICE in the streets, these stormtroopers, as you rightfully say. My God, in America today, to have men wearing military uniforms, seizing control of the streets, being authorized by their executive leaders to violate the Fourth Amendment of the United States willy-nilly, just to barge into the homes of American citizens without a proper warrant from the judiciary, and the judiciary doing nothing about it, and Congress doing nothing about it, and frankly speaking, the American people doing nothing about it, because this constitutional republic doesn't live unless the people are willing to defend it, and the people are ignorant of that which they are willing to defend. So it's all too easy for this egomaniac to seize dictatorial power, because he has seized dictatorial power, and he now has an army of militarized law enforcement occupying American cities in regions of the country that are not politically loyal to him. And I fear for what will transpire come November in the midterm elections, when he turns this army into an occupation force designed to suppress the democratic will of the American people. We are in a lot of trouble in America today, and most Americans are simply ignorant of it because, again, you can't defend that which you do not understand. And for Americans to defend the Constitution, they would not only have to read the Constitution, but live the Constitution. And we are not doing that in this country today.
Well, I think that answer will travel far and wide and last. A perfect encapsulation, if I may say so, of the current situation. But you say the people are not doing anything about it. Well, they are in Minneapolis. From what I can see, the people of Minneapolis are risen. And this very evening, these stormtroopers are being assailed and attacked. I mean, the worm eventually turns, doesn't it, Scott? When you are wreaking havoc in communities, and it's extraordinary that the two people they've murdered in the last days were both American citizens, both white American citizens, both wholesome American family people. And this latest man was an ICU nurse in the Veteran Affairs Hospital. And he was carrying a weapon that he was fully entitled to carry. And he concealed it as he was fully entitled to do, indeed required to do. He never pulled a gun. The gun was taken from his holster, and then they murdered him. It's as clear a case of cold-blooded murder as I've ever seen on camera.
No, George, you're 100% correct. I mean, this is an extraordinarily sad day. It was sad when they killed a 37-year-old mother whose sole crime was trying to survive the assault being waged on her by ICE officers who were reaching into her vehicles, illegally so, and she was trying to escape, and they murdered her. They killed her. She wasn't gunning after anybody, seeking to assault anybody. And anybody who says that is, frankly speaking, I have to be careful what I say, but they're not in tune with the facts. They're straight up lying, but it's more than lying, George. There's a mental illness that's afflicted the American people. and it's the mental illness of power, and the need. We've seen it how we operate overseas. I've been very critical of this. How people who could be law-abiding Americans here can go to Iraq and shoot a man for crossing the street, or shooting a farmer for approaching their checkpoint, or just barging into a home and slaughtering a family and walk away and think nothing of it. It's an indifference to humanity. It's an indifference to human life that exists as in the way America interfaces the world, because it's us versus them. But now in America, we've taken that same mindset of us versus them, and we have Americans versus Americans. And frankly speaking, we don't have Americans versus Americans, because the Americans doing the assaulting aren't Americans, because you can't be an American unless you are loyal to the constitutional republic. And so we have non-Americans, these citizen aliens, so to speak, who are hunting down the law-abiding Americans, citizens, and murdering them in the streets. Yes, I applaud anybody who resists this unlawful use of authority, but I fear because I used to believe that those who took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution would never take arms against law-abiding American citizens, that is a red line that could never be crossed. I am not certain of that today, because more and more I am seeing that the people who put on the uniform, whether it's a law enforcement uniform or an American military uniform with the flag of the United States of America on their shoulders, that flag doesn't mean the same thing to them as it means to real Americans, people who love their country, who believe in the Constitution. That flag has become a symbol of oppression, of authority, of brutality, that it's an empowerment to commit these acts. And I fear for the citizens of Minneapolis, because if the brutal power of federal authority is unleashed to its full extent, it will be a very, very bloody day, and woe be it for the nation when that happens.
Yeah, it could be Kent State exponentially expanded. Isn't all of this the reason why Americans were given the constitutional right to bear arms, to defend themselves against an oppressive and expansionist, dictatorial federal government?
George, here's where I need to be careful. And you know why I need to be careful. Because every word I say is being monitored by this very same federal government. I believe in the Constitution of the United States of America. Therefore, I brook no illegal challenge to constitutional rule. And therefore, I would never embrace any notion of violent opposition to the Constitution of the United States. But when the Constitution ceases to exist, and the government that is carrying out its actions is so far removed from constitutional authority that it ceases to be recognizable as a government, one can only fear what the consequences of that could be. The Second Amendment gives every American a right to bear arms, and it is derived from the necessity of an armed citizenry to prevent tyranny from being lorded over them by governments that have lost faith with the people. And if you look at what happened in Minneapolis, one can only say that the government has lost faith with the people. And again, the consequences of that are horrifying. I believe in nonviolent resistance to government. I believe that freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and the kind of, opposition that Martin Luther King was famous for leading in the streets of America, civil disobedience, is the way forward. I believe in the potential of the American people to rally to the cause of the Constitution and elect people to represent them in higher office who believe in the same values. This is what I believe in, and this is what I'm going to fight for, and this is how I will fight. But I will not sit here and pretend that other people may view the situation in the United States far differently and may believe that the Second Amendment is their last refuge of defense.
Let's turn to the international scene then, Scott, because if America is violent at home, it's far more violent abroad. And I was making the point in my monologue that all of the military pieces are now in place for much speculated upon new assault on Iran. Certainly the Iranians believe that. Your friend and mine, the great Professor Marandi, believes it. And the closing of the airspace, airlines cancelling flights to the areas that would be immediately affected, even Dubai. The flights were cancelled yesterday. The fear is that Trump, perhaps to again perform the look over there maneuver, is about to launch a new war. Do you think he is?
Sadly, I do believe he is. I was not someone who believed that he was going to attack in this last go around because the pieces weren't there. It was clear that if he did attack when people were suspecting in the aftermath of the riots, that the Iranians had the unmatched ability to annihilate the American forces in the region and inflict horrific harm on Israel. The Israelis, from what I can tell, have made it clear to the United States that they're willing to absorb up to 700 Iranian ballistic missiles. And that's a price they're willing to pay if, at the end of this exchange of military power, there is no Iranian regime, that the United States and Israel are successful in removing the Iranian regime from power. And we need to understand this, that the United States is not seeking to do another slap on the wrist or military demonstration. That if the United States participates in military action against Iran, it will be of an existential nature, meaning we are seeking regime change in Iran. The Iranians must know this, which means there can be no checks on their response. And they must immediately respond in a way that is not only devastating to American military and Israeli infrastructure, but the energy security structure of the entire Middle East. This can no longer be theoretical. It must be real. It must be actualized. And it has to be instantaneous. I think too many people in the world today have become accustomed to conflict in the Middle East being spectacular on the video screens of their television or their cell phones or wherever they watch their news, but it doesn't impact their day-to-day lives. I fear that this next conflict will have a tremendous negative impact on the entire world because it will be disruptive of that which fuels the entire world, the energy that comes from the Middle East. It will be destructive to global markets, fragile economies, including the one here in the United States that lack resilience, will collapse or will be greatly damaged. And people will wake up. For all the people out there who believe that a Shah would be better than an Ayatollah, understand that this is not the case. The Iranian people, first of all, do not want a Shah. The majority of the Iranian people, while they recognize that their current government has policies that need to be improved on, are supportive of this democracy that is the Islamic Republic. Again, people need to stop being wedded to their ignorance. This is not a dictatorship of Ayatollahs. This is a functioning, thriving democracy where people regularly empower elected officials in the parliament and in the presidency. They also elect people who monitor the theocracy, the assembly of experts. Do your homework, people. Google it, find out what it is, and find out how they're elected. The people elect the assembly of experts, and the assembly of experts monitors the supreme leader. So he's not a supreme leader. There's democratic checks and balances on everybody in Iran, and it functions in a way that is responsive to the needs of the people. Look at the videos coming out of Tehran in the malls. How many hijabs did you see in the malls? Not too many. Many women are wearing their hair freed from the hijab. Why? Because according to the Iranian president, who I had the honor and privilege of speaking to last September, he said, we listened to the people. We recognize there must be changes in policy. That is a government responsive to the needs of the people. Let it alone. Let them live in peace. Let them do what they need to do to thrive, to prosper, just like all of us. But instead, we've allowed our ignorance about Iran to manifest itself so that anything negative said about Iran is believed at face value. And now governments filled in power by the ignorance of their respective populations to carry out a conflict that is going to be not just disruptive to the world economy, but destructive to the world economy.
Turning then lastly, and I'm grateful for your time as always, to the most destructive of the many destructive currents that are loose in the world, that in the Ukraine. Now, on one level, talks seem to have quickened, leading, in my heart at least, to a renewed optimism that this can be resolved without having to be fought all the way to Kiev. Are you optimistic about how things are on that track?
Sadly, George, I don't share your optimism. Yes, I see these negotiations taking place, but, Karen Knissel, she's the former Austrian foreign minister who currently resides in St. Petersburg, where she heads something called the Gorky Institute. She is a specialist in foreign affairs. She has said something over and over again, and I agree with her. Whenever you hear anybody talking about a deal, that's the language of gangsters. That's the language of thugs. Real governments don't make deals. Real governments sign treaties. Real governments have agreements that are based in writing. What we're seeing right now is an American rush to a deal. And fortunately, the Russians are pushing back. They don't want to deal. The Russians have said, going back to December of 2021, when they put forward draft treaties about a new European security framework, that all arrangements with the West must be in writing and must be treaty-based and must be binding and enforceable. So the Russians aren't looking for a deal. They're not gangsters. And so you have the Russians sitting down at the table, and again, we don't have all the details coming out of the United Arab Emirates, but what we are seeing is that the Russians are holding the Americans' feet to the fire for the agreement that was reached between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump in Anchorage, Alaska, about the status of the Donbass. 100% Russian controlled, no foreign troops at all. And now you see that the deal makers in the United States are trying to go back on that. We're going to have a peacekeeper force. The Russians won't control all of it. And the Russians are, no, we're not cutting a deal with you. We're not doing that sort of thing. This is going to be an agreement in writing, a treaty. And until not just the United States, but Ukraine and Europe understand that this, because even Europe, this, George, look at Minsk. The Europeans never intended to implement Minsk. It was always a deal designed to buy time. The Ukrainians are the same way. They aren't looking for a lasting peace with Russia. They're looking for a pause in the conflict, during which time they can recover, rebuild, re-equip, retrain, and resume the war. The Russians are looking for a final solution to the problem, and I'm not using that in a Nazi Jew way. I'm using that in making sure that this war does not resurrect its ugly head. Russia's not looking for the destruction of Ukraine. They're looking for the pacification of Ukraine, and that will only happen with a treaty, with an agreement that is binding and long-lasting. It'll never happen with the kind of deal that the West has tried to cut in the United Arab Emirates.
Now, you and I are far from fans of Ted Cruz, but in actuality that was released this evening, I presume secretly recorded, Cruz was utterly damning of Marco Rubio and of Donald Trump, and he predicted that in November the Trump administration is going to lose control, not just of the House, but also of the Senate. And he says that Trump will be impeached every other week. it seems that you're in for a very, very turbulent time in US politics.
I hope so. I hope we're in for a turbulent time. That means that the American people are fighting. That means we're struggling. That means we're not going to just allow ourselves to drown. We're going to kick and scream and struggle and wait and hope that for a rescue can only come from within. I pray that this president, who was given every opportunity to succeed but has only shown himself capable of embracing violence-fueled failure, I hope he is crushed at the polls. I have encouraged everybody to do anything but vote Republican in the fall, not because I support the Democrats, I don't, but because I don't support Republican dictatorship. I believe that this country needs to be paralyzed politically so the American people wake up to the necessity of refamiliarizing themselves with the Constitution, make this a constitutional republic. Good things can only come from struggle sometimes, and America needs to struggle. We need to have the kind of political struggle, peaceful political struggle. That's how we cure ourselves, not through violence, not through ICE occupying our cities, compelling Americans armed through the benefit of the Second Amendment to violently oppose. That's bad for America. That's the end of America. What we need is the kind of political paralysis that means that the political system is non-functioning and the American people start to elect better people into higher office to represent them, people who believe in the Constitution. So, yes, I would hope that after November, this president wakes up impeached every single day of the week for the rest of his term, that he is paralyzed, that his administration can't continue to run shambles, because that means checks and balances are in place. That means the Constitution is still alive, and that's a wonderful thing.
And Nouri al-Maliki is back. Did you ever see that coming? The Prime Minister of Iraq is the one the US removed. It's not going so well for them there. Well, Scott Ritter, I've kept you longer than you intended.
My bingo card makes no sense. When you take a look at what's happening, the bingo card I picked has none of that. So, hey.
Exactly. Well, I'm a Manchester United fan. We've just defeated Arsenal, having defeated Manchester City last week. Go figure. Scott Ritter, the one and only. Thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. What an interview that was. Let me take a very belated and quick break. I'll be right back. Stay tuned. I think you don't have to worry about these things with Mamdani, because my overwhelming feeling is that Mamdani is a phony. He has as much intention of doing these things as, I compare him to a figure in British Labour history who became briefly famous in the US when Joe Biden was found to have plagiarized him during a presidential run some decades ago. But that man's name was Neil Kinnock. He used to talk all this flowery, far left guff like Mamdani does, but he had no intention whatsoever of actually doing anything about it, of doing any of it. So there's no chance whatsoever that Mamdani is going to defund the New York Police Department.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
How about this? Elgin Street in China, in Hong Kong, right in front of a Greek restaurant. Why is that important? Because the father of this Elgin is the thief who stole the Elgin marbles, stolen property which still is hidden in the British Museum rather than being returned to the people of Greece to whom it belongs. But this Elgin, he burned the Emperor of China's summer palace into burnt firewood. He bombarded China until they agreed to give Hong Kong to the British. And the Chinese still allow this street to be called Elgin Street. His father was a thief. This Elgin was a pirate, a brigand, a terrorist who terrorized the Chinese into giving up Hong Kong. I think I said earlier that the Chinese never forget, like an elephant. They never forget anything. But interestingly, they haven't done anything about the outrage of an Elgin Street in the People's Republic of China, albeit in the special administered region of Hong Kong until the 2047, I think. Yes, 2047 it becomes like all the other territories of China. But that notwithstanding, this is China that I am sitting in. And they allow a street called after the man who burned the emperor's palace and who bombarded China until they agreed to give up Hong Kong to the British. It is truly extraordinary. Unlike many Western people who go around toppling statues and changing names and so on, I think China's attitude is that the history is the history. And nothing is served by pretending that that history and these people didn't exist and didn't do what it is that they did. It is a tremendously significant difference between China and the rest. I'm in Hong Kong now, but the next show will be coming to you from Gotham City itself, from the most extraordinary city in the entire world, the city of Shanghai. Let's look at the poll. It is overwhelming that people believe Trump's intention is for this Board of Peace to replace the UN. I'm one of these that believes that the UN needs replacing, but definitely not by that scurvy crew assembled by Caligula just the other day. Let's take a call from California, where Will wants to talk about that very Board of Peace. Will, what does it do for you?
Oh, George, thank you for taking my call and a great interview with Scott. We always enjoy those. But you know what? It sure seems like we must bomb back better to build Trump Gaza Plaza these days. You know, the map of New Gaza is exactly what we think of when we see the prototype for these ridiculous 15-minute cities. And, you know, the likes of Steve Witkoff obviously embarrassed Jared Kushner on 60 Minutes a few weeks ago when he spilled beans on Gaza plan that has been in the works for obviously over 2 years. And Jared is the money man. And this new Board of Peace is nothing more than a Zionist global corporation and an eventual replacement of the UN, like your poll is working out today. It's been a long-time prophecy that the New World disorder will be relocated in Jerusalem, giving us one police force, one military, and one New World government. Old Testament versions like the Talmud and Khazarian folklore have long predicted this dystopian prophecy.
I never believe in old books determining what's going to happen in the real world. What will happen in the real world will be what the people of the real world decide it to, or at least have the chance to decide it to. Of course, as Scott Ritter was making the point, if the people don't give a toss, then the rulers will do what they like. But I'm sufficiently confident that the people will not allow it. The people of Gaza will not allow the creation of casinos and golf clubs and bordellos and all the paraphernalia of Kushner's fevered imagination to take place, while on top of the skulls and the bones of their lost relatives, and while they shiver in concentration camps. that are currently being constructed for the purpose. I don't believe that that will ever happen. The Palestinian people did not struggle all this time and make all this sacrifice to just sit there in their concentration camp while Kushner builds a Trump Tower and casino. It will never be the kind of Atlantic City that Kushner clearly imagines that it will be, and it will be relatively easy for the rest of us in the rest of the world to destabilize these efforts. Already you're seeing lots of European countries who are refusing to be a part of this board of peace, some of them for the most ridiculous reasons. Keir Starmer, for example, he's not going to join the board of peace because Vladimir Putin has been invited to join it. And indeed, the president of Belarus, Lukashenko, has already joined it. The government of Vietnam has already joined it. And that's one of the reasons why Netanyahu is extremely twitchy about it. I mean, if you look at it on one level, it's a bit like the curate's egg, good in parts. It ends the notion, legally fictional notion, that Gaza belongs to Netanyahu, that Gaza belongs to Israel. It no longer does belong to Israel. It belongs to Donald Trump and his board of peace. They have literally taken over Gaza and will now have responsibility for it and everything that happens in it, to it, and with it. So I wouldn't be too apocalyptic about that, Will, and I certainly wouldn't trust what you called prophecy. The Talmud and the rest was written by them. It wasn't written by God. God's not an estate agent that promises people land in perpetuity. That's bollocks. They wrote this book about themselves, and they wrote it to facilitate what it was they were trying to do. And it has no divine force at all. God gave us agency. God gave us the ability to know right from wrong, and the ability to do right or do wrong, and judge us at the end on how we did or how we didn't do. So I'm not at all pessimistic about the final outcome of all of these things. Of course, there will be many trials and tribulations along the way. Will in California taking us neatly to the hour, after which Shaun Rein will be with us. He's a real expert on China. Stay tuned.
Many people today struggle with the common mainstream media consumer. These types of people are mindless zombies. Instead of living authentically, they feed off masking their true thoughts and feelings, doing nothing and criticizing those who actually do their research. These type of media consumer can be highly manipulative, so here are some golden standard clapbacks when they start with their propaganda. When they say you are too much for them, show them a mirror and tell them to look for less. Draw a diagram of where your business is and their business is, to visually show them they are in the wrong area. When they say, please watch this clip from this reputable BBC journalist, remind them that there are no longer any reputable BBC journalists, and to instead watch the mother of all talk shows for some real journalism. The next time you encounter a brainwashed zombie, hold your head high and know their obsession to eat your brain is masking their jealousy of your confidence, your freedom in self-expression, and most importantly, your authenticity. Keep listening to learn more on the mother of all talk shows.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the US and Canada, which are, at the time of making this show, separate countries. It's +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, which will always be separate countries. 08081 965522, and the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Don't forget to vote on the poll, where overwhelmingly people seem to think that Donald Trump is up to no good with his board of peace. Shaun Rein is the author of The Split, Finding the Opportunities in China's Economy in the New World Order. And a very fine book it is too. Shaun, welcome back to the mother of all talk shows. Before we talk about the bigger picture, breaking news tonight is that the two generals, military men that are under investigation in China, one of them, one of the most powerful men in China, is accused of giving nuclear secrets to the Americans. If this report is accurate, this is a truly remarkable turn of events and effectively unmasks a coup which failed, but a coup nonetheless inside China, which most people thought was impervious to such things. Have you got a view on that?
So it's good to be here, George. I don't have any inside knowledge of what's happened with the arrest of Zhang Youxia, who was actually the top uniformed military man in China. Some people say it's about corruption. Other people say that it's about factional fighting and potentially a coup, as you mentioned. Now, from my experience in dealing with the Chinese military over the last 30 years, corruption is a serious problem. I can give 2 points. In the 1980s, when China was first embracing capitalism, it was actually the military that first started going into business. So they owned all of the nightclubs. They owned a lot of industries, and they became not fighting machines, but they became basically for profit. If you wanted to open up a hotel, or if you wanted to do anything big, you would always try to give a 10-20% cut to the military. And so Jiang Zemin, the former president of China, tried to stop this, and he banned the military from actually being in business. But the reality is the corruption is serious. So when people say that, is this a crackdown on corruption? There is that possibility. I know I did a project for a hedge fund 10 years ago that was selling Mao Tai and Wuliangye, the very expensive white alcohol in China. And they were selling it to the military, and my investor client thought that the business would collapse because of the crackdown on corruption. We called the military procurement officers and they said, no worries, we're going to keep buying alcohol. We're the Chinese military. We can do whatever we want. So the reality, George, is that the Chinese military is rife with corruption. Now, I don't know in this case if this was a crackdown on corruption, but here's the thing. 5 of the 7 people on China's Central Military Commission have been arrested or under investigation over the last 2 years. That's unprecedented to have so many people. What it means is I actually think it means that China is not going to try to use armed aggression to attack Taiwan anytime soon, because the military is focused on corruption, balance of power issues, whatever it is. I think you hear the drumbeats of war that the West says that China is about to attack Taiwan isn't going to happen anytime soon. Now, the other thing, George, is when it comes to Taiwan, what a lot of Americans don't realize, and British, is that the relations between the KMT, or the Kuomintang, the opposition party in Taiwan, is at an all-time high with the CPC right now. So President Ma, the former president of Taiwan, who's the head of the KMT previously, has been visiting mainland China several times in the last couple years. He's been feted like a hero. The current chairman of the KMT said she would like to meet with President Xi. And what China has done is they've given subsidies, they've given special benefits for any Taiwanese that live in Fujian province, the province closest Taiwan, to buy housing, go to university, and seek medical care. So in my mind, because of the disarray in the Chinese military, because China's pragmatic, I don't see armed aggression between Taiwan and mainland China happening anytime soon. I don't think that there is a deal between Xi and Trump where Xi takes Taiwan and Trump takes Venezuela.
No, I'm absolutely in agreement with you on that. The KMT look like they're coming back to power. The current government of Taiwan is deeply unpopular and becoming more and more so. These visits are taking place. It looks much more plausible that the apple will fall from the tree rather than that it will have to be violently shaken. Now, you mentioned corruption. It is the leitmotif of President Xi Jinping to destroy corruption. I mean, his latest statement that those who seek political office should not seek wealth, and those who seek wealth should not seek to influence those with political office. And he's been remarkably successful in this, hasn't he? And that's coincided, might even be causal, that's coincided with an enormous increase in China's wealth and the standard of living of the Chinese people.
Yeah, that's a great point. So when Xi Jinping became chairman in 2012, he really faced two major challenges to his legitimacy and the legitimacy of the CPC. The first was pollution, and the second was corruption. The pollution in 2012-2013 was terrible. You often hit over 300 or over 500 on the AQI index. You felt like you were chewing the air. I mean, I almost left China in that time because the pollution was so bad. Now, you get blue skies most of the time. The AQI index is as good in Shanghai, where I live right now, as in most cities in the United States. And that's why you see outdoor running, marathon running, rock climbing is soaring as a hobby in China because the pollution is so much better. It's not even an issue. I was actually in Thailand last month on vacation, and the air in Shanghai was better than the air on the ocean side in Thailand. So Xi needs to be given credit for that. The second part is corruption. It was like you wouldn't believe in China. You could drive a car. If you were an official and the police stopped you for driving too fast, and I've been in cars like this, in a friend's car, where the friend would say, "You can't give me a ticket. You don't know who I am." And then they would call someone and say, "Don't give him a ticket," to the police officer. The corruption was a day-to-day, 5 times a day an issue that everyday Chinese got mad at. Now, here's the thing, George. What do governments need to do? So in China, under Xi Jinping, the CPC is looking after the 90% of the population, the low and middle class Chinese. There are about 850 million of them. These are people that the government says, you know what? They might not be rich, they might not have a lot of influence, but they're the majority. As a Communist Party of China, we need to take care of them. So what the CPC has done under Xi, and you have to give them credit, is they've cracked down on corruption. They've extended access to medical care and education, right? It's only about $2,000-3,000 US a year to go to Tsinghua, the best university in China, while it costs $100,000 a year to go to MIT or NYU or Harvard in the United States. I just got my teeth cleaned in China. It cost me $8 with an x-ray. It can cost $350 US in America. So while America, the problem is the government is based off of helping the rich 10%. You see a Donald Trump, you see a Ted Cruz, you see these politicians do whatever their political patrons want. The Ken Griffins, the Alex Soroses of the world, they try to raise money from them and then implement the policies that they want. In China, the government has decided we need to help the 90%. Now, that doesn't mean everything's perfect here. Don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of problems in China. But Xi Jinping and the CPC need to be given credit for cracking down on corruption, basically stopping air pollution, and focused on improving the lives of the top 90%, the 850 million Chinese who just want to go to school, feed their kids, see a dentist.
Let's turn to the economy, on which you are a considerable expert. Your book is absolutely brilliant, indispensable actually for anyone who wants to understand the Chinese economy. And if you don't want to understand the Chinese economy, you're particularly stupid, as it is already the world's biggest manufacturer and is, I think, arguably already the world's biggest economy, although the Chinese, in the ancient way, often like to feign inferiority, and they don't like you saying they are the biggest economy. They either are, or they're knocking on the door of being the world's biggest economy. Your book deals with the opportunities for the West in that, and for capitalism within that. But the Western governments have been particularly stupid in continuing to foster enmity and even hostility against China. In my monologue, I made the point that Keir Starmer, on his way to kowtow to the CPC, has spent the last few years variously describing China as an adversary, as an enemy, as a security threat. In the Parliament just a month or two ago, the Speaker of the Parliament held an emergency statement to say that the Chinese were everywhere under the desks in the British Parliament, spying on unknown MPs who know nothing, I can tell you, worth knowing, or spying on. Macron, only again a few months ago, evincing hostility against China. Von der Leyen ordering the European Union to send their navies to patrol China's seas and threaten China. Now, they've all realized with Trump's behavior, they better suddenly get close to China. What are their chances?
Yeah, I don't understand Europe, George. I think there's obviously geopolitical tension between the US and China, and Europe should be the major beneficiary. Europe should play the Americans and the Chinese off each other. So, Macron should be coming to China and saying, we'll support you a bit if you buy more Airbus airplanes. But then they should go to the United States and try to get more LNG gas and other energy and play off China. The big winners of geopolitical tension should be Europe. But Europe is poorly run. If you look at it in 2009, Europe's economy was actually larger than America's. Now it's 40% smaller. So the problem is we have people like Kaja Kallas, the head of foreign affairs, who I just don't understand how she possibly could have that position, who's tweeted that China is happy and is the threat because the United States is trying to take over Greenland. Somehow she makes it about China. Or Mark Rutte, the former Dutch prime minister, who's now the Secretary General of NATO, has said that China will definitely force Russia to attack NATO countries. And he's been sort of prostrating himself and bending over for Donald Trump, despite Trump threatening Denmark and threatening Greenland. It just doesn't make any sense. So what should Europe do? They should follow the playbooks of Australia's Albanese. They should follow the playbooks of Mark Carney in Canada and try to do deals with China. So China is a very strong economy. It's the second largest in the world, perhaps the largest when you look at PPP, as you said. But here's the thing. The economy is weak right now. Youth employment is about 16.5%. You have real estate has dropped 30 to 40%. Retail sales only went up 0.9% in December. So we're having a weak quarter. Am I worried about China's economy in the long term? Absolutely not. It's going to still be the major driver for economic growth, accounting for about a 30% of economic growth in the world in 2026. So long term, China's fine. It's got AI, it's got semiconductors, it'll do well. But in the short term, there are some issues, and that's because the United States is trying to contain China. So what does China need to do? It needs to sign deals with European nations, and that's the best opportunity. So instead of buying soybeans from the United States, China started buying soybeans from Brazil. Instead of buying oil from the United States, they're buying oil from Canada. Instead of buying beef from the United States, they're buying beef from Australia. So this is a real opportunity for European nations to say, look, we want to sell you more products, get rid of the trade deficit, and more importantly, George, is they need to say, you know what, China? We want your companies to come to Europe, build factories, and hire European workers. It's a win-win for everyone. They should say that BYD or Xiaomi, which are big NEV makers, should buy up hollowed out factories in Germany or France from the automakers and hire local workers. Now, here's the problem. Huawei tried to do this in France recently. They spent millions of dollars building up a big factory only to shut it 2 months before it was supposed to open. Why? Because Macron's government said that Huawei could no longer be involved in the telecom system of France. And so they said, you know what? Why should we be here? They closed the factory and left. That's the problem, George. You've got this fearmongers in Europe. You've got bigots. You've got racists who on the one hand say they want Chinese money, but then they spit on China and call them a threat. That's the problem that's going on in Europe right now. I feel really bad for Europeans because most Europeans I meet are pretty nice, but they've got the worst leaders in the world. And if you don't get better leaders soon, Europe is going to be the next Africa in terms of economic impoverishment.
Well, that's a zinger, Shaun. That one will live. I'm coming to Shanghai in a couple of days' time. I'm hoping to get a Zeekr and one of those 40% cheaper apartments that you referred to. But let's turn to Comrade Carney, as I now call him, having reviled him for many decades. He's now standing up to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is openly threatening him to the point that it would not be beyond the realms of imagination for the Americans to actually take action, not just economic action, but kinetic action against Carney. For what? Because he's made a trade deal with China? Will Carney stand up to this threat, do you think?
Yeah, I'm scared for the world right now. I think Carney has a backbone. I think he's doing what's good for Canada. I'm American, even though I've been in China for 30 years, but I actually went to McGill University in Canada for my college. So I have an affinity for all three countries. I think Carney's doing the right thing for Canada, right? He can't put too much reliance on the United States. Right now, Canada does about $600 billion US a year in economic trade with the United States. Only about $100 billion a year with China, but he needs to offset just the same way that I said Europe needs to do. He needs to play both sides. And I think a normal leader would be understanding of that. The problem with Trump is I think something has snapped in his brain in the last 4 or 5 months. I've never been a never Trumper. I actually like some of his policies, but honestly, I think there's some mental illness that's emerged in the last 4 or 5 months. And so you can't look at him from a geopolitical or trade standpoint as, doing 4D chess or doing spheres of influence in the Donroe Doctrine versus China and Asia. I think he's being driven by narcissistic personality disorder and which he's always had, but also newly emerged mental illnesses. And so I worry what he's going to do. When I speak to government leaders in small and mid countries, they're fearful for their families. They say that under Trump, because you have sycophants in the cabinet like Marco Rubio, that they're going to just sanction not just the presidents or prime ministers of countries, but also go after their families. And if you're a small country, especially in the Western Hemisphere, and you're the head of a country that's 500,000 people or 50,000 people, and your kids get sanctioned, your kids can't do anything. I mean, this is evil. I mean, if you want to sanction a government leader, that's one thing, but what about the families? And this is my concern for Carney, because Carney's daughter is at Harvard right now. She's a freshman, my alma mater, and I think a lot of this becomes personal, because when Carney's daughter was trying to apply to or go into Harvard over the summer, Trump was holding up the sword of Damocles saying that international students couldn't get student visas to the United States. And he was specifically targeting Harvard. So I think that the Carney family saw, they weren't singled out at this time, but I think they saw the behavior of Trump and how that hurt his daughter. And I think that probably gave Carney a bit more backbone than he might have had, because he saw his own family getting hurt. So my concern, George, and I don't mean this as a joke, I don't mean this because I hate Trump. I like Trump's policies towards China more than I like Biden's, But I do think we have mental illness right now. And so he's making decisions that are not based off of 4D chess, but also he can't control himself. If he feels that somebody's attacking him or not being a sycophant, he will lash out and hurt countries. And what he's doing to Canada is morally wrong, just like what Biden did to China was morally wrong. It's a very scary time, George. It's time for the 25th.
Scary indeed. Well, Miss Carney should know that I didn't go to Harvard or any university at all. And look where I ended up, interviewing the great Shaun Rein on the mother of all talk shows. Hope we meet up in Shanghai next week. That is Shaun Rein, author of The Split, Finding the Opportunities in China's Economy in the New World Order. Some comments before the break. Douglas Howard says Ritter had his whole life savings stolen by Trump for yelling the truth about Trump. He was, of course, famously debanked in the parlance of this golden age, where they don't steal your money, they give you your money back and tell you they no longer want to hold it for you, and you can no longer bank with them. Rachel Thompson says America's brown shirts will have brown pants if the people really get pissed. And Martin Kicks says the founding fathers of the US feared a fall of the Republic and the rise of an American Caesar. Their fears have been realized, except the Caesar is Caligula. Rod Lusk 6000 says you can't vote your way out of this, folks. That's why you have weapons. Let me take a break, and then it's your calls right up to my slot with Gayatri on the social media roundup. Stay tuned. I'll be right back. A big thanks to the people who support me on the Patreon page. I really have come to depend on the income from that. It costs £1 a week, not even the price of a cup of coffee in an insalubrious cafe. If you think you could stretch to that, please support me on Patreon, patreon.com/George Galloway. Now, the MOATS team have added a tiered system on my Patreon page where you can become an official MOATS graduate. How about that? I speak as someone who graduated from nowhere, from the factory floor in Michelin. But you can become a MOATS graduate and legend. You can give a regular donation to support the show and my work. You can now upgrade from a mere Patreon to a MOATS graduate at £10 a month, as opposed to £5 a month, I think it is. And you can receive official MOATS legend status for £20.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Let's go straight to Stephanie in Connecticut on Minneapolis. This is the global university of the airwaves after all. Stephanie, welcome. What would you like to say?
What is going on in Minneapolis now and what I think is likely to... Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Start again.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say that what is going on in Minneapolis now and what is likely to spread, I think, to other cities and states is not just about Donald Trump or his administration or about immigration. It's really about the empire coming home. What our empire has done around the world to people in other countries who speak out, what our empire has done to suppress their speech and to repress them is now coming home. And it's not the first time. I grew up during the Vietnam War era. It certainly happened then. It happened during the Civil Rights Movement. It's happened a lot. But this seems to me the biggest that I've ever seen. But I think that anyone who thinks, oh, this is just about immigration, better think again, because this is really about repressing us as we begin to wake up more and more. to what is really going on and what our empire is really about. And anyone who thinks, oh, it's just Donald Trump, and if we get rid of him, everything will go back to normal, should think again as well. It's not about either of those things. It's something much, much bigger. We don't see the Democratic Democratic governor of Minnesota doing very much. We don't hear much from the Democratic members of Congress. I think it's easier for Trump and his administration to get away with this stuff, but I nevertheless think this is much bigger.
Well, I agree, and it sounds like we kind of grew up in the same era. I remember vividly the Kent State Massacre, when American students were shot dead by the National Guard for exercising their right to protest against a Vietnam War that eventually killed 58,000 Americans and millions of Vietnamese. And the civil rights era that you describe is vividly captured. I saw the FBI putting out a Martin Luther King meme the other day, the same FBI that bombarded King with anonymous letters encouraging him to kill himself before secret recordings of his misbehavior that they had recorded were released, the very same FBI. So you're right, it isn't only Donald Trump, and it definitely isn't only the Republicans. The civil rights of black Americans were trampled on by both parties, and the Vietnam War was waged by both parties. And getting rid of Donald Trump will be necessary, but not sufficient. The point is, I suppose I'd like to ask you, Stephanie, you say it will spread to other areas. Right now, the people of Minneapolis have risen up. Will the people of the rest of the Republic do the same?
That is the $64 million, with inflation, the $64 million question. I don't know. I really don't know. I know that people everywhere, I'm in Connecticut, and the people here are, inflamed about what's going on, but I really don't know. And I don't know what the backlash to that will be either. It really does seem as though the powers that be want to induce a civil war amongst us. But whether it goes in that direction or what, I really, it's hard to say at this point, I think.
Very helpful, Stephanie. Thanks for the call. Now, on the big donor front, there's a growing number of new names on the nightly wall of fame. I'm very happy to report that. Is your name up in lights yet? It could be. Well, these are the people who are the biggest donors this week. Andrew Skilleter, David Harkin, Jeff Woodland, Lisa Roddy, and Suzanne McCash. I'm very, very grateful to you. We need that cash, Suzanne, and you have given generously, but we need it from everybody. Don't freeload on the others. Just send $1 if that's all you can spare. Send €1, send £1. It's very easy. You just go to MOATS.tv and click $1, £1, €1. Am I not worth your euro, your pound, your dollar? Is this show not worth it? Please do it tonight, MOATS.tv. You can scan the QR code now and go straight to it. My old friend and the legend, Terence in Reading, is on the line now. The US is rotting. Terence, I think you want to say.
A couple of things, Mr. Galloway. First of all, happy Burns Night. I'm surprised you've omitted that tonight as a Scotsman. Well, happy Burns Night to you. The second point is, I just think it's remarkable. I just think it's remarkable what Persia called Zelensky a confused clown. That just put him back in the box in Davos, where he shouldn't even be anyway. America rotting from the head down. I've seen some things in my life, but I've now seen what it is when a country is going haywire, and it is rotting from the head down. More importantly for you and your party, I got a bit of a buzz on about Andy Burnham, not him, your party, because the division is going to create in the cardboard Zionist starmers notebook is going to be terrible, because I think your party can win that. You know, you talked about making electoral pacts and such with Polanski's party, whatever, truly independent parties. This is the time, I think, you know. And last point from me, Mr. Galloway, for this evening is please pray for Mohammed Umar Khalid, the last of the Palestinian Action hunger striker, who's on strike, and he's close to God as we speak. And they've turned away people from women's clubs and making up all sorts of lies and calumnies about blocking the road and all that nonsense. But a man is going to give his life for something that is above, my head is tingling, just is above and beyond reproach. Just win Manchester, Mr. Galloway. You do it.
Well, thank you for that, Terence, as always. You stole my thunder, because I was going to close the show with my favourite Robert Burns couplet or two, and so heard your wish until the end of the show for that, if you will. The very somber news that you bring, that the hunger striker in a British prison is close to death. Everyone should realize that this man is on hunger strike because he's being held and has been held now for well over a year, awaiting trial on terrorism charges. And the terrorism involved is the non-violent civil disobedience of a pro-Palestine organization that I daren't name, such as the level of dystopia in the British state. Thousands of people have been arrested in Britain for holding up cardboard placards under the terrorism law. Gayatri and me were held at gunpoint in an airport under the Terrorism Act, and she accused of hostile acts which turn out to be disinformation. That's now a terrorism issue. That's now a hostile act. When any fool knoweth that one man's disinformation is another man's information. We're in exile because of disinformation. Are you serious? And that's the state of Britain, where elections are being cancelled. Millions of people denied the right to vote on the fiat of the Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and where his own fellow Labour Party leaders and members are on the fiat of Keir Starmer, denied. Nothing shows strength, does it, like using bureaucratic manoeuvres to exclude from Parliament your rivals. Terence, thanks for that call. Let's stay in England, go to Birmingham, where Daniel wants to talk about Iran and the US. On you go, Daniel.
Hello, Mr. George. Hello.
By the grace of God, I'm good. And you? Go ahead, Daniel.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year, by the way.
Thank you, bro.
I don't know from where I start, actually. I'm sorry, probably my English not very well, Mr. George. But what happening is not today or in Middle East, actually. Not from today or yesterday. This is from long time ago, back to 80. Create the movie Back to Future, if you saw it. There is some clip. Yeah, there is one clip about what happened in future, like what happened in 2001 in New York, 9/11, and this is all come from that. Yeah, but the big question is, who actually did 9/11 in USA? Bin Laden and his group, and them are coming from actually Arabistan, Saudi, not from Iran or Iraq. or it's actually Afghanistan. And the big question, how happened 9/11? All this was fake. Actually, I saw some clip from, I think the guy, Tucker Carlson, if you know him, that YouTuber, Tucker Carlson. And
yeah, go on.
Yeah, he was saying CIA, he was new about 9/11, and he bring the group of Bin Laden from the different countries. I don't know. He's training them from Somalia, from somewhere else. He got actually a couple of clips, and FBI understand, but coming to arresting these people in USA, even training them and bring them before 9/11 in USA. FBI understand them and they want to arrest them.
Well, look, Daniel, we're wondering a bit here, and the issues that you're raising, while important, have been well canvassed before here on the Mother of All Talk Shows. There's definitely much more to 9/11 than has been revealed, and much of what has been revealed is completely false. Who did 9/11 and for what reason is indeed an open question. If it was Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, they certainly haven't been able to do anything remotely like it since. And if it was them, the question still remains of who is Al-Qaeda? Why is Al-Qaeda? Why is ISIS? And what is ISIS? And who really is behind them? All of these are open questions, but very big ones, and we're running out of time, so I won't be able to follow you down that rabbit hole quite this evening. I've got to tell you about the podcast. Have you downloaded the MOATS podcast yet? That's the question. If not, you definitely need to. This week, we're in the top 20 for politics in Russia, UAE, Pakistan, and Croatia. Top 40 for politics in New Zealand, Portugal, and Qatar. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen right now. I've got a call from another legend. It's Simon from Weaponized News. On you go, Simon. What news have you?
Greetings to you, Mr. Galloway, and to your worldwide audience. Well, it would seem that along with the European turkeys, the American turkeys have finally, whilst your show has been broadcasting worldwide, decided that they should indeed vote against Christmas in the European case or against Thanksgiving in the American case, because now even the National Rifle Association of the United States has come out with a critique of the second shooting in Minneapolis, Mr. Pretti, and they've taken issue with the suggestion that if you exercise your constitutional rights to carry concealed, in that case with a license, that you therefore are up to no good and deserve to face a firing squad whilst disarmed lying on the ground. And I think that this may well indeed be the turning point for conservative opinion, that even if the National Rifle Association, which you'll appreciate is a very conservative and pro-gun owning and gun carrying group in America, starts going against the official narrative from a conservative administration, then that should give people a great amount of pausing and thinking about what have actually occurred, and whether or not the narrative is a worthy one, or whether or not a law-abiding administration should indeed have the wherewithal to be able to stand up to a little bit of criticism and actually have the matter properly investigated, and indeed allow local state authorities with an appropriate judicial order even access to the scene and to interview the federal agents involved. It's very, very clear that some of these people seem to be swept into this organization with ICE, that is, with minimal training and quite a profit and bounty motivation. And so one can quite see how some of these people get rather carried away in the exercise of their ostensible duties. But unfortunately, it looks like some other American citizens may be called upon to engage in more unlawful conduct by attacking the Islamic Republic of Iran in the near future, as I understand you've already discussed with Mr. Ritter. The consequences of that, and indeed the disagreement as to whether or not the attack even goes ahead and whether or not local bases are used, are now splitting the region. It's interesting to see Qatar and Saudi Arabia very much against the proposed operation, whereas the Jordanians sadly have rolled over and allowed a very, very large fleet of F-15 Eagles, American Air Force aircraft, to be stationed in their country in order to interdict any response that may come from Iran if they're attacked. What is also occurring that has not received so much press coverage is a massive influx of American armed forces into a remote airfield in northern Lebanon. So it would appear that not only have Hezbollah been squeezed into a box there, but the government of the nation of Lebanon, unfortunately, now appear to be willing to allow their country to be used to establish a forward operating base for American forces for this attack. And it should be noted, of course, that when the British government isn't too busy doing away with jury trials and locking up old ladies for holding pieces of cardboard with a particular organisation that they don't think should be banned, along with the UN, then they are also preparing to engage in armed conflict without any support or a vote in the British Houses of Parliament for such a course of action yet again. So there's a lot to be watching, and unfortunately, it may be more than just folks in Minneapolis who suffer the consequences of the flailing of the Trump administration as we see the dying days of the rules-based international order.
Amen to that. Lots to be watching, and the best place to be watching is the mother of all talk shows, and one of the best places to be reading and following is Weaponized News. Simon from Weaponized News, a masterful summary of the state we're in. The one thing he didn't mention is that the NRA, the National Rifle Association, is almost as big as the American Israel Public Affairs Committee in the financial donations to American politicians. So now that the NRA have cracked the whip, you wait and see the hundreds of American politicians who weigh in on Donald Trump's specific tweet or Truth Social. I mean, this is not from somebody else. It's not a background briefing. He stated on Truth Social that if you have a gun concealed in your holster about your person, you are at risk of being killed, murdered by ICE. How about that? Well, Paul is in Ottawa in Canada, and he wants to talk about Mark Carney's speech. Let's wait and hear what he has to say. Go on, Paul.
Hello, George. You hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, excellent. Well, this is pretty short, but he did a typical thing in public speaking. He used an anecdote to sort of go through the speech, and the speech was, he would said, "Oh yeah, communism. Why did it fail?" And he used some intellectual who said, "Oh, it failed because they put up a sign in the shop. They made the sign go all over." And what was the message of that sign? Workers unite. Of all the things that he could have said, he said, workers unite. They were forced to put this up. Well, in my opinion, I don't need to be forced to put that up in a shop. Workers unite. it's a great thing. And he said, well, we all know that this is stupid. And he actually said, we know that this is wrong. Why should we not unite? And it's curious to me that that is the one tie that he put throughout the whole speech. We're not going to put that up in our shop anymore. We're not going to comply to workers unite. I know it's a small thing. I've never heard anybody complain about it or say, well, that was kind of silly. I'm pointing it out that it's kind of silly, and maybe I'm silly for pointing it out that it wasn't the key mark of the, but it kind of was, because he's talking to a bunch of...
You're not at all, no. Yeah, you're not at all silly that he is putting it out, and he is in many respects a very foolish man. But he's now done the right thing for Canada in making a proper economic strategic partnership with China. And Donald Trump has just threatened him and said that he will simply not allow Canada to sign a trade deal with China. This is a new level of brigandage. And so I have no hesitation in saying that if it comes to a conflict between Donald Trump and Mark Carney, I am with Mark Carney. There's a legend on the line, Paul, so I'll have to clear you off. It's May in Oklahoma. Welcome, May.
Hi, George. Much love to you, Gayatri, and your team, and your whole listening audience. I have three things I wanted to talk about tonight. The first one is just kind of minor. It would be wonderful if you would make some of your jingles available as ringtones, because, you know, that's one way that your fans could sort of advertise you. I'd love to hear some George jingles on my phone whenever I get phone calls. The other thing is I'm totally behind Scott Ritter. Americans need to learn about the Constitution. And I have a friend who actually has a project going in the state of New York where they read the Constitution in public places, like in libraries, for example. He hands out copies, and people take turns reading it and discussing the meaning of it. And I think that's very important that Americans do actually read the Constitution. What a shame we don't do that in our schools anymore. If you'd like his contact information, I can give it to you. And then the last thing, I think it is absolutely time that the cabinet and the vice president invoke the 25th Amendment, because I believe Trump is no longer able to fulfill his duties as president in a rational manner. He does have dementia in his family. I think he's becoming, as you have said, also completely demented. Things he is doing are not only irrational and illegal, but just flat crazy. And it's not only our country. I mean, look at you. You have to be in exile and traveling around the world because you can't be in your own darn country and be safe from persecution and prosecution. So the whole world has gone crazy, but I think Trump is one of the leading influences that is causing that in the world and making it okay for people to say, I care about the law.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly. Thanks for the first 2 pointers, and I'm sure our people will be even now packaging our jingles as telephone ringtones. It's a wonderful idea, and I'm grateful to you for pointing it out. But the dementia in the Trump family is not well enough known. Trump's father, whose middle name, I'm not joking, was Christ, maybe the messianic mania of Donald Trump is indeed hereditary. But when his dementia became as severe as it would become, they told him he was going to work every day. They put him in an office every day where he thought he was making decisions, thought he was dictating events, but the rest of the family and the rest of the people in the business were just humoring him. He wasn't actually making any decisions or any calls about anything. And that's one option for Donald Trump, perhaps. But the 25th Amendment is undoubtedly now hoving into view. Trump is now a malignant tumor on the face of the world. And maybe he has a malignant tumor somewhere in that skull of his. But whether it is mental illness, whether it is evil or venality, doesn't really matter, because this man is a clear and present danger to the constitutional republic of the United States of America, and more importantly, to the entire world. And it's time for somebody to do something about it. It's a great call. Thanks for that, May. Now, have you become a member of the MOATS Exclusive Club? If you become a top donor, you will be anointed with legend status. There's a growing number now on tonight's Wall of Fame. Danielle Levenko, Ron Singh, Jared Plummer, Simon Sherwin, and Lark Kerr. Very grateful to all of you. And to lesser donors who may not have enough to become top donors, but can still leave £1, €1, or $1. It's important. No show must go by without the legend Erebos in New York, who wants to talk about the Board of Peace. Erebos, welcome back, sir. We have lost the legend that is Erebos. Now, as I said, we are on our way after this show to Shanghai. Shanghai is a place which, if you've never yet been there or never yet looked at the ample photographic and video evidence, is truly a city of the 21st, maybe even the 22nd century. It's a place that was long a plaything of the colonial occupiers of China. Shanghai was a city that was actually governed by foreigners who had their own parts of the city, a French compound, a German compound, a British compound. They are amongst the things that we'll be talking about. Someone just suggested that I should make a Far East political travelogue. Galloway's Travels, I'm calling it, and that is precisely what we are intending to do. But Erebos is back on the line. Erebos, welcome.
Salutations and greetings. Can you hear me, Mr. G?
Very clearly. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, we're in the midst of we're locked in an ass-breaking storm that's going on out here. I had to drag a generator a couple hundred feet, so I don't know how much longer if we'll have power. However, in the interim and in the meantime, I want to say, of course, shout-outs to Clan Galloway, the wonderful MOATS audience, the crown jewel of the MOATS staff, the child, the magnificent, first of her name, well planted in life. I just the guests you had, especially Shaun Rein, his articulation, his clarity, his preciseness. I started following him. I thought I was following him from before, but it was refreshing to hear someone so clear and to the point and unbiased. And I really like listening to him. I think as a quick blurb, I think the majority of people that watch you and don't like or subscribe, I'm under the impression that they hate watch you, which is to say they have this thing where, they're obsessed with you and they hate you, but they can't get enough of you. Like they love to hate you at the same time. It's like people talking about Trump's mental illness. I think it's called Epsteinism. right, or Epstein psychosis, because all of a sudden, once this Epstein thing started to blow up in his face, he just went crazy. He wasn't that stable to begin with. So you might have a Epstein psychopathy or Epsteinosis, one of those two. That's what this Board of Peace, the UN has become such a vestigial sort of mucus-driven garbage. This competition to it seems to be even worse. And I could see what you were saying earlier about Netanyahu's protestations against it, because he'll basically be kicked out the whip, as they used to say in gang terms, right? He'll be dropped off to the curb and sped away. But still, I think a lot of it is just performative. He will still be making the main decisions with the neocons as long as they're in power. That seems to be the issue they have with them. And I know time is always against us, so I wanted to share my end of the world plans, right? So I think everybody should have them, because there are no heroes at the end of the world. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. But I see myself sauntering into a bar for the last time, have a dry martini, definitely shaken, not stirred. And, I'll make my way over to the karaoke and belt out my last rendition. Why not? The world is going to end and everybody's running around with their hair on fire. Why not just go out on a high note? And my rendition would be, Pussy Hat Girl, she's talking to me, cheek to cheek, nobody here, just she and me, is where I wanted to be. I hardly know this pussy by my side. Ooh, ooh, I'll never forget the way you look tonight. Ooh, ooh, I'll never will forget.
Well, we'll never forget the way you sounded tonight, Erebos. Everyone should have an end of the world plan. What a tantalizing idea. Perhaps I'll ask people to start giving me what their end of the world plan would be. It might be premature, but it's always a shadow, a sword of Damocles hanging above us. I cut you off, Erebos, only because it is the end of the show, and I have to ask for your attention, please, to the woman without whom the news wouldn't be the news. Here's Gayatri. Gayatri, what's rattling?
So we showed earlier that we were on Elgin Street here in Hong Kong, here in China, and what a brute, supreme colonialist he was. But another one of them was Winston Churchill, who died on 24th January 1965.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so just a day or so ago. He called the Chinese a barbaric nation. He advocated for the partition of China. He said, I hate people with slit eyes and pigtails. I don't like the look of them or the smell of them. But I suppose it does not do any great harm to have a look at them. So this was Winston Churchill on China. But where did we sit when we were in Macau earlier this week? Churchill's table, Churchill's bar, Churchill's this, Churchill's that. So your point about China, yeah, it's just
forgiving, right?
Forgiving, and history is
Not
history. They're
necessarily
pragmatic.
forgiving. No,
They're
not
pragmatic.
really forgiving.
No, it's
they're,
not.
They're just not destroying the evidence.
No, it's just they're pragmatic, and I guess they can afford to do so. China is more than a country. China is a civilization, and this is why what China has achieved in the past 8 decades is a miracle. and is incomparable, really, to many other countries.
Oh, totally. It's incomparable to anything in human history.
Yeah, miracle.
And I suppose from their point of view, they've got the last laugh. Churchill didn't like how they looked or smelled, but Britain is now, well, I don't want to use the popular word, street word, but let's just say it's going down the drain, whilst China is vaulting forward year after year after year.
Yeah.
So China has the last laugh.
Yeah.
And that's what counts, isn't it?
Yeah. Another death anniversary that I cannot pass is someone who was a true friend of China, no one less than Paul Robeson. He died on 23 January 1976. He is, of course, the Renaissance man that we all know, and he is our prominent, our first great Wall of Fame.
Yeah.
Yes.
Number one.
We celebrate him, and we will always celebrate him. We want the name Paul Robeson to be a household name in American households, in African households, in Chinese households. There he is in Chinese and in Russia, because he was a great friend of China and Russia. He is, of course, an all-American football player. That's how he started at Rutgers University, at Columbia University. He had a law degree from there. He was a fantastic stage actor, playing Othello. He was one of the best bass baritone voices. He was, of course, an anti-imperialist and against fascism. And because of his friendship with Russia, Soviet Union and China, they went after him.
That destroyed his life. Yeah. I mean, it's important to remember there is no movie star that you can think of who was bigger than Paul Robeson was in his stage and movie career. He was the highest paid entertainer in America, which meant the highest paid entertainer in the world. And they took his passport. They cancelled him, basically. Yeah. And people never saw or heard from him again. All because he advocated peace in the world, peace between the United States, the Soviet Union, and China. This Renaissance man, of course, was the first in everything. He was the first black football player at Rutgers. He was the first black law graduate at Columbia University.
Correct.
He was the first black to break into stage and movie roles in Hollywood. The very first. He was somebody really special, and this is his death anniversary. Anything else, Gayatri?
Just a reminder to our audience that Wednesday we will be having Dr. Professor Jeffrey Sachs on.
Jeffrey Sachs. And we'll be in Shanghai, God willing. I can't take you for chips. It's 5:05 in the morning, but I will take you for breakfast. And the rest of you, I hope, I'll see on Wednesday on the first show that we will have ever broadcast from the great city of Shanghai. And we'll do some travelogue to set it up for you. It's been marvellous. Hope you enjoyed it. See you on Wednesday.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.